Let's get set to start a brand new week here on Locked On Blue Devils. A couple of recruits are in town. We've got some scheduled news to dive into with Duke basketball and so much more.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson, and it's so great to have you here with us today on Monday, May 5th, 2025. Locked On Blue Devils is your one-stop shop where we discuss everything going on inside the life of Duke athletics, focusing a whole lot on the Duke men's basketball team and talking about the news and notes regarding Jon Scheyer's bunch. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review, particularly there on the Apple Podcast platform. Really appreciate all the great fan support that we've got here with the show. Also, watch our show each and every day on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Share these videos with our friends, and let's continue growing the audience here. On today's show, Kevin Connelly from Ball Durham. Here he is with us on the program, and excited to catch up with him on all the latest news, notes, and happenings across Duke basketball. Kevin, I hope you're doing well. I hope it was a good weekend for you.
I'm good, JJ. Thanks for having me again.
Awesome, man. Well, let's dive in. Let's talk a little bit about some of the new headlines that we've got from Duke basketball since the weekend came and went, and a lot of people focusing on the schedule that's starting to come out. It feels like more and more dates are being announced and matchups are set to be had, and we'll start with one that we found out about being in the Spectrum Center. It appears as though Duke is heading back to the venue that they won the ACC tournament there in Charlotte, North Carolina on November 5th, taking on the Texas Longhorns.
Yeah, I think this is a good game. Remember, Texas is in the SEC, an NCAA tournament team from a year ago, although there was a lot of change. Rodney Terry was fired. They bring in Sean Miller from Xavier. I know people remember him a lot. He was the former Arizona coach as well, and then kind of got tied up in that whole FBI scandal, got fired. And then once he kind of served his time in probation and whatever from the NCAA, got hired back by Xavier, where he was before he was at Arizona. So I think it's always difficult, even in this era of transfer portal and NIL, of building a very competitive roster in your first year, although we've seen it done in the past. We've seen Pat Kelsey take Louisville from the biggest dumpster fire of all dumpster fires all the way up to the NCAA tournament, even though they lost in the first round, but still made the ACC tournament. And, Texas has a lot of resources that they're able to use, but I still think it's going to be a good game for Duke. It's going to be a home game, being in the Spectrum Center, being in Charlotte. Obviously, they don't have to travel that far compared to Texas having to get on a flight and come all the way to North Carolina. So I think this is just another one of a really competitive non-conference schedule that Duke is putting together.
I'm looking at the series between these two teams. Duke has not played the Longhorns since 2017. Duke is 5-0 all-time against Texas. So a pretty enticing matchup that we could see to open up the season. I think I said November 5th a moment ago. It looks like the game's going to be scheduled to be played on November 4th, which you might figure this could very well be one of the very first games that Duke plays to open up the season, man, jumping in against a big-time opponent in the Texas Longhorns.
Yeah, I think it will be, because I'm pretty sure opening day is November 3rd, that Monday. So I highly doubt Duke is going to play back-to-back games and play a game at home on the 3rd and then go to Charlotte and play on the 4th. So for all things considered, I do believe that this is the opening night game for Duke, although nobody has said that officially. All indications seem like this is going to be their first game of the season. Kind of brings you back to a couple of years ago when they would start the season with the Champions Classic. Remember, they had a couple of bye games before the Champions Classic and then went to Atlanta, Chicago, New York, Indianapolis, wherever it was being held that year. But then they kind of changed the schedule and they started the Champions Classic as the first game of the season. So it kind of brings you back to that, where you're going to play a big-time opponent on opening night.
Working our way through the schedule to remind people, in November, about a week later on November 11th, that's Veterans Day, Duke is making a return trip to West Point. They're going to play at Army. Really cool non-conference game that we'll see the Blue Devils take part in. It has been quite some time since Duke has been up there. 1997 was the last time that the Blue Devils went up there. This is a part of their most recent 3-game deal with the Black Knights, so they'll be up there on November 11th.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's really kind of nice to see that Duke has this partnership with Army, obviously the ties to Coach K, and they kind of play them all around Veterans Day. So Veterans Day is November 11th this year, and the fact that Duke gets to go up to Army and play them, there's going to be a lot of pageantry. It's going to be really interesting to see. I mean, it's not that big of a gym. I would imagine it's just going to be all full of cadets. I would imagine Mike Krzyzewski is going to be there as well, which I believe it's going to be the first true road game that he's at since his retirement. He's been at neutral site games,
Right.
Final Four in the NCAA tournament, and obviously he's been at a handful of home games, but he has not been at a road game. So I think it's cool. I think it's going to be a cool environment. I think it's great for college basketball, and the fact that it comes on Veterans Day is a little bit more special.
Really fun to see this game play out, to see what that looks like. Then also on Friday, we talked with Steve Wiseman from the Raleigh News and Observer about kind of schedule options and that sort of thing. We learned about the possibility of Duke making a return trip up to Michigan State to kind of level out the Champions Classic meeting that Duke had on campus due to COVID back in 2020. John Rothstein did put reports out there that this was being finalized for sometime in December. So, wow, another true road game on the docket for Duke against Michigan State.
Yeah, and this has become a rivalry over the past however many years, 20, 25, 30 years with Coach K, with Tom Izzo, and they're always good matchups, whether they're in East Lansing, they're in Durham, or they're at a neutral site in the NCAA tournament. This has almost become a fixture with Duke and Michigan State as a rivalry. And one thing I'll add, JJ, is remember the report that came out, I think it was about a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, that the ACC was considering dropping from 20 conference games to 18 conference games,
right,
to try to help boost teams' NCAA tournament resumes. And that could go into effect as early as this year. We're actually going to find more about that this month, because I know the ACC has their annual league meetings in May. So that an answer could be coming on that relatively soon. And you're already seeing Duke load up on this non-conference schedule, and those two games aren't meant to play North Carolina A&T or a Belmont. They're meant to play a big-time non-conference game, whether it be at home, whether it be on the road, or whether it be a neutral site game. So maybe, John Shire would have some insight to what he thinks that the ACC athletic directors and league presidents are going to do, if they're going to approve that or not. So he would have some insight. So maybe that does go into effect this season, and you're seeing Duke already get a jump start on building up that non-conference schedule.
Duke basketball is 15-3 all time against Michigan State. Really impressive record against the Spartans, although this would be only the third time ever that Duke has played up there in East Lansing. There have been a couple of ACC Big Ten challenges over the years that Duke has been a part of, and now, of course, it's the ACC SEC Challenge set to be played. So we'll go ahead and we'll take our first break here on the program today. A couple of more schedule thoughts and other things to dive into with Kevin Connelly when Locked On Blue Devils continues here in a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades, Supply House. Whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product information to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400-plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Do you need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Supply House is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. Okay, Kevin Connelly's here with us. We're talking all things Duke basketball, kind of working our way through some of the non-conference schedule as we know it to be right now. A really, really tough competitive schedule that Duke is set to go through. This, of course, always features the championship class or Champions Classic each and every year. It's going to be played in Madison Square Garden, a place Duke's very familiar with, and Kansas due up on the docket for the Blue Devils in that matchup, Kevin.
Yeah, Duke gets a turn against Kansas. They had Kentucky last year. They'll get Michigan State in 26, 27. So it's always either Kentucky, Kansas, or Michigan State is going to be on their schedule. And who knows, JJ, all three could be on their schedule this year. You have Kansas in the Champions Classic, like you said. We already talked about Michigan State. And Duke still has the SEC ACC Challenge on its schedule, which is likely to be a road game. And Duke very well could be going to Rupp Arena. This is the game we've been waiting for since the ACC Big Ten Challenge went away, and they got the ACC SEC Challenge. And Duke went to Arkansas in its first year. They went to Auburn, came to Cameron last year. Like, everyone had been anticipating Duke going to Rupp or Kentucky coming to Cameron as soon as this challenge was announced, and it hasn't happened yet. Could this be the year? And again, Duke is scheduled to go on the road because they were at home last year. Could this be the year that Duke goes to Rupp Arena to play Kentucky?
Duke has never played in Rupp Arena. There have been 24 all-time meetings between Duke and Kentucky. Every single one of them have been in a neutral site. The Blue Devils have played in Lexington against Kentucky in the 1980 NCAA tournament, as I'm doing some research here, Kevin, but that was not a home game for the Wildcats. So this could be the very first time that Duke plays at Rupp Arena against Kentucky once we find out that opponent in the SEC ACC Challenge. And then once again, going back to a Big Ten opponent, we talked about it a little bit last week, but a Michigan team in February that Duke is set to play in Washington, D.C. on their schedule.
Yeah, and then one other game that we haven't mentioned is that Thanksgiving game in Chicago against Arkansas. Right. And JJ, just to follow up on a point that I made before we took our first break, this past season, Duke had 5 premier non-conference games. They played Kentucky, Arizona, Kansas, Auburn, and then Illinois. And that was with the 20-game ACC schedule. This year, or this upcoming year, I should say, they already have 6 of those games booked. And now, if the ACC goes from 20 to 18 games in the league, they would need 7. And I kind of see that trending this way because I still think Duke could add a home and home with a big-time team. Because you look at Texas, Kansas, Arkansas, Michigan State, the SEC opponent in the SEC ACC Challenge, and Michigan. So that's 6 big-time non-conference games already. If that home and home gets added, that's 8. Or excuse me, that's 7. So kind of fits right in to some of the reports that came out a couple of weeks ago about the ACC going from 20 games down to 18 games for their league schedule. So again, like I said, John Shire would have an early indication on, is this going to pass? He would have that knowledge. And the way he's building this non-conference schedule, you think that is going to pass. Duke's only going to play 18 ACC games this year, for better or for worse. Is it an exaggeration on kind of how the league performed this past season? It might be. It might be kind of prisoner of the moment, heat of the moment. We have to do something, make our teams play better non-conference games to boost their NCAA tournament resume. Who knows? But the only time I can think about this happening, and maybe other conferences have done it, I'm very close in covering the Big East as well. The Big East on the women's basketball side did this, going from 20 games down to 18 games, but they did it not because they're trying to get more teams in the NCAA tournament. They did it to cater to one team, and that was the Connecticut women's basketball team, to play more high-profile non-conference games rather than having to play some of the bottom teams in the Big East Conference in women's basketball who are not great, and UConn would beat them by 45, 50, 60 points.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because I certainly could think of a lot of, UConn, Tennessee, and UConn versus South Carolina, and just premier games that Gino Arima's squad was going to go up against. So with that being said, taking a look at the schedule as a whole, you would also figure, to your point, that, it might not be an overreaction. I think the ACC will get better with some of the coaching changes that we've seen taking place in the league, the work that they've done in the transfer portal at various schools. That's still work that remains to be done for the Duke basketball squad, but excited to see how they fill out the rest of the non-conference schedule. Kevin, I would like a, quote, cupcake game or two still to be announced so that we could see this Duke team kind of get some of those chemistry things put together. We could see some possible walk-on minutes for the squad this upcoming season. In all likelihood, they're not going to be as dominant in a conference. We're not going to get as many Spencer Hubbard minutes in conference games this season. So it's always good to have that level of competition to get your full team into a basketball game.
Well, don't get me wrong. I think you still will. Maybe it's just not as many. I'm quickly going back to this year's Duke team. And after on December 17th, when they played George Mason, they were 9-2. They had played one league game against Louisville. So they were really 8-2. So they played 11 total non-conference games this year. I mean, that number could go to 13, kind of what we're anticipating. They're going to play 13 non-conference games this year. And if 7 of them are against big-time opponents, then 6 of them would be kind of your quote-unquote bye games, your cupcake games. Just the one caveat this year is one of them comes on the road in a true road game against Army. So then you'd probably have 5 non-conference bye games at Cameron going forward in this non-conference schedule.
Let's see how it all comes together. We'll see exactly what the squad looks like for Jon Scheyer as he goes into year 4 as the head coach of the Duke basketball team. Time continues to fly by. All right, we'll start to wrap up our show after we take our final break here today on Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's very easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. Your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch Money, I'm able to realize how much I was spending on food delivery, now able to budget smarter and save more. All in one convenience. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch Money to check your finances, track spending, and see everything. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. A proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, Kevin Connelly's back here with us talking all things Duke basketball. And Kevin, here we are a few days removed from the big news already of the offseason in regards to, filling Jay Lucas's spot on the bench. Evan Bradds will be the new assistant coach for Duke basketball. What have you thought of the reaction that appears to be there? And again, just more thoughts on the hire that Jon Scheyer made.
No, I think a lot of people have praised it. I think we kind of touched on it when he got hired, that he is this rising coach, specifically in the NBA. We talked about his time with the Boston Celtics and the Utah Jazz, and how Jon Scheyer is very friendly with both of those head coaches, and got the perfect 2 recommendations for him to leave the NBA, come to college, try to bolster his coaching acumen a little bit. So everything that I've heard and I've read is positive reviews on this hire.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to see him in action, see what he looks like on Jon Scheyer's squad, making the player development steps with all the players coming back for another year and the guys coming into the program. And then now that Duke's got a couple of recruits that have been coming through the building in the last 72 hours or so, he gets to kind of figure out exactly what that looks like. I'm excited for us to see our first little bit of content of Evan Bradds wearing the Duke gear so it can become a little bit more familiar than these Photoshop things that they're putting out there in a press release of what he looks like donning that Duke uniform. So in that spirit, kind of talking about Duke basketball recruiting, it was expected that Duke had Braden Hawthorne on campus over this past weekend. And then we also learned from Brandon Jenkins of 247 Sports and their whole team that Sebastian Wilkins from Brewster Academy is on campus right now taking part in an official visit, the 2026 recruit for the Blue Devils. And this is something, Kevin, that you specifically have been talking about for quite some time.
Yeah, I think first start with Sebastian Wilkins. He is a 2026 recruit. He is expected to reclassify into 2025. I know Maryland has been recruiting him. I think Texas A&M has been involved as well. I think those are the other two big schools after him and really that he's considering along with Duke. Braden Hawthorne is already a 2025 prospect. He has risen up the recruiting rankings very quickly here over the last about 2 years. A former West Virginia commit, decommitted after the coaching change and is still looking for his next school. So I would think one of these two players will be Duke Blue Devils at some point in the near future.
And
I don't think both will be Blue Devils. I think one of them will be a Blue Devil.
Yeah, and I mean, at some point, I think it could happen this week. I think we could get some momentum to figure out exactly what it looks like in that regard here. We need players, man. You look at this roster, and, there's still a little bit of the uncertainty whether or not Cedric Coward's going to be making the call back to college basketball after he's committed to Duke via the transfer portal. Hopefully, there are a couple of other transfer portal targets that might emerge for Duke basketball. But right now, Kevin, we got to put people on the team.
Yeah, I think the one thing is, yes, the coaching staff is still scouring the portal to try to find anybody that they could see fit. I haven't heard a lot of names linked to potentially in the transfer portal. That is a legitimate contender. You get Cedric Coward. I will say I would have to imagine things could be a little bit uneasy over the next 10 days inside that Duke basketball camp, just with the fact that Cedric Coward and Isaiah Evans both got invited to the NBA draft combine. And who knows if they have these incredible combines, do they potentially change their mind and remain in the draft rather than coming back to Duke? Dame Sarr is someone that Duke has been linked to. Who knows if Coward or Evans remains in the draft? Does Duke pursue Sarr a little bit more heavily than they have? I think that's the only way that Duke could potentially go after a player like that. International prospect, really thought of. Illinois is on him a lot as well. So I could only really see Duke going after him should a Cedric Coward or an Isaiah Evans perform really well at the NBA draft combine and remain in the NBA draft and not come to play for Duke.
Yeah, the NBA draft or the NBA sent out 75 invites for their combine. It's a great sign if you get an invite, right? And so for Cedric Coward and Isaiah Evans to receive those invites, that's big news. But then also worth noting, Cooper Flagg, Con Knippel, Kaman Malawach, Tyrese Proctor, Sion James, all of those guys received invites to the draft combine. That's awesome news for Duke, Kevin.
Yeah, and if you want to keep your eye on the NBA draft combine, I think a lot of Duke fans are going to, primarily because of Evans and Coward. I don't necessarily expect Cooper Flagg, Con Knippel, and Kaman Malawach to participate a lot in the drills and the scrimmages that they have. They'll still be there because the draft lottery is next week as well. So obviously 3 guys projected to go in the lottery will be on hand to see who wins the lottery and how it shakes out. I would imagine they'll go through the measurables, the physical testing, and the medical testings. But I don't necessarily anticipate, especially Cooper Flagg, to go through the individual workouts that they have at the NBA draft combine. I expect him more to work out for maybe the team who has the number 1 and number 2 pick, and probably that's it.
And at the NBA level right now, obviously, we've got our heart and hand on the NBA playoffs with what's taking place there. When you look at former Blue Devils taking that next step, Jayson Tatum and the Boston Celtics are on to round 2. Really fun matchup with the New York Knicks. Boston, New York. It's amazing. We'll see that matchup unfold. And then, unfortunately, our guy, JJ Redick in the LA Lakers, his first year as a head coach going through the playoffs, he's been eliminated over the last week after the Lakers fell to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Those are kind of the 2 big guys. A couple other guys still in the playoff mix, but obviously Celtics, Lakers, those get the headlines. Tatum, Redick get their fair share of press and bub as well.
Yeah, Jayson Tatum now trying to win his 2nd consecutive NBA championship. And remember, now he's happy that his team won the NBA championship, but a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, I think, right? He wasn't named as the Eastern Conference Finals MVP. He wasn't named as the NBA Finals MVP. You had the drama over the summer, him coming off this championship run and not getting the playing time he expected with Team USA. So maybe a little bit of a chip on his shoulder in this postseason. And with JJ Redick, a great rookie year for him as a head coach, had to deal with just so much. Look at the wildfires in Los Angeles that destroyed the house that he and his family were renting. Then obviously you go on the court and kind of having to change everything up he was doing with this Lakers team after the trade for Luka Doncic, and Anthony Davis is traded away from the team. So I think a great first season for JJ Redick, but maybe that coaching inexperience got exposed in the postseason, especially in the series against Minnesota, and you're seeing it throughout NBA social media and NBA coverage, whether it be on Twitter or TV or YouTube or whatever, kind of holding JJ Redick's feet to the fire, kind of for some of his explanations on, or lack thereof, of what he did with his rotations in the postseason.
Yeah, and substitution patterns and all that thing. Nonetheless, third in the West, 50 wins. Pretty impressive rookie debut for JJ Redick. Hopefully he can continue to have success as a head coach at the next level. Kevin, it's always good to see you, my friend. Really appreciate you stopping by to go over some news, notes, and headlines, dive into that schedule with me, and so much more. We'll have to do this again sometime soon. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, JJ.
All right, that's Kevin Connelly joining us here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. As always, make sure that you subscribe to us on YouTube and wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils. As always, let's go Duke. I'll talk to you again tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.